What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 12 of the Hoop Venue podcast. My name is Tyler, and as always, we are joined by my great friend, Sean. It's been, I think, over a week since we recorded our last episode. Teams are now over 20 games, so we're officially 25% into the NBA season. How are you feeling about the first quarter of basketball, Sean?
I feel pretty good. I apologize about my voice. I'm already really subconscious about my voice. You talk for a living and you start to overanalyze how you sound. But no, I feel really, really good. I feel really, really good now that we're a quarter of the way in about some of our preseason takes that might not have looked too hot after 5 or 10 games into the season. But, you know, like you said, about a quarter of the way in now, so things are starting to normalize. And so I say, yeah, like, Milwaukee isn't the worst team. They're not the worst team in the East.
But Philly is.
But Philly is, right? I mean, that whole team just went downhill. Atlanta's awesome. Or they're starting to get some things going. Memphis, like, we're going to talk about a lot of teams. I'm excited here for episode 12.
Where do you want to start? You mentioned Atlanta and Memphis. They're both on the agenda today. I say we start with Memphis because they've been like maybe the best team in basketball over the last 2 weeks. I think that's not a strong take. They could be getting some luck with the schedule, but they've won 6 straight games. And many of this, like not even just the last 6, but going back even before that, they've been playing games without Ja. They've been playing games without Desmond Bane. Gigi Jackson has yet to play a single game. Vince Williams has played 3 games. So a bunch of critical rotation players, and they're just like a machine, a two-way machine, I want to add. I think they might be currently, I could be wrong, but I feel like they might be the only team that has both a top 6 offense and defense right now. You're the stat guy, so you're going to have to check on that for me. But, we in our last episode, we went over MVP candidates. And I kind of had like a scorching. You're nodding your head. What are
5th in offensive rating, 6th in defensive rating?
And are they the only team top 6 in both? I believe they are. Unless OKC or Cleveland could be close, but I think Memphis is the only. We talked about
OKC and Cleveland are both close. My bad.
Okay, yeah. So we talked about MVP candidates, and I kind of had a scorching hot take where we did our top 10 ballot. And I had Jaren Jackson 9th, kind of like out of left field. We didn't even really talk about him or his season at all. And Jaren has taken an offensive leap to the point where, like, last season we saw the flashes. He was asked to be like a number 1 at times, mostly a number 2 to Bane. And he had to really self-create a lot of his two-pointers. And he showed a lot as a driver. He's great at drawing fouls, great at using his body to create contact, has the really good touch with the left hand. To go along with the fact that he's a stretch 4. And now we're seeing a more actualized version of that. Like, instead of flashes, this guy's just a consistently good scorer. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think up until like 2 games ago, he was averaging like 22.5 points on 62% true shooting or something, just really, really effective. And again, John Bane missing a lot of games, so he's asked to be the primary creator. He's self-creating these looks. Jaren's an immensely talented player because with that offense, you also get like defensive player of the year caliber, rim protection, switchability, all of these things. And so Jaren has been like the steady force for this team to go along with the fact that they unequivocally have the deepest roster in the league. Like, I don't even think it's close. There are deep teams, like OKC's deep.
Golden State's deep.
Golden State's deep. Memphis is like 15 rotation players. I listed a couple out here. Jalen Wells is like, if Jared McCain didn't exist, Jalen Wells would be the clear front runner for Rookie of the Year. He's been an immediate impact player. He started in 16 of their 21 games, and is like an efficient, just an efficient two-way player. And that's like just rare. That doesn't happen. You of course have the elite trio of Ja, Bane, and Jaren. You know what you're getting with those guys. Even though Bane, we talked about it, has had a somewhat slow start to the season. Like I said, Vince 3 games, GG 0. And to replace it, you've got Scottie Pippen Jr., Jay Huff, Jake LaRavia, Luke Kennard, Zach Edey, Brandon Clark, Conchar, Cam Spencer just dropped 51 in the G League.
Yeah. Say Edey, GG, Vince, they're both hurt.
What are we doing, man? This team is Santi Aldama. I didn't even mention Santi Aldama, who's been legitimately amazing. as like the ultimate connective piece, a 7-foot stretch who can dribble and pass. Like I saw a tweet just to hammer my point home. I want to say it was from B-Ball Index. It might have been from Cranjus McBasketball, and it was it was like the amount of two-way rotation players on each team, and that meant they have an above average offensive LeBron and defensive LeBron.
Cranjus, I saw it.
Yes, and I was looking through the teams. I was like, okay, Boston's got 4 of them. I feel like realistically they should have like 6, but okay, Boston's got 4 of them. I think Cleveland might have had 4 of them. OKC, I think, had 3 or 4. Memphis had 8.
Yeah.
Eight players with an above average offensive and defensive LeBron. We were both very high on them coming into the season, and they've honestly exceeded both of our expectations. So I kind of just did a whole sermon, but how are you feeling about the Grizzlies and about your preseason take?
Yeah, I'm taking a victory lap and on Memphis because I think the thing about Memphis that just I never fully understood heading into the season was I'm gonna give I've had my critiques of this group of this like trio and coach and Taylor Jenkins and those 3 guys in particular in Triple J, Ja, D-Bane. I've had my criticism of them in the past, but regardless of what those things may be, when they are healthy and have any semblance of a team, they are a 50-win team when they are healthy. So pretending to like ignore that and like not put faith in that, I at least want to give them some benefit of the doubt and say, look, they're a 50-win team when healthy. If they come out and don't and just severely underperform, all right, that's on me. But Memphis, I think, has earned our trust, kind of to a certain extent. Like I think a team like Denver kind of has in terms of earning the benefit of the doubt. Dallas in a weird way because of how good Luka is, and he's gonna play himself into shape. Eventually, we're gonna look back. We're gonna look in February and be like, is Dallas a real contender? We're gonna have the conversation we have every single year with Dallas. I think we just have to get used to it at this point.
Yeah.
So I want to start there. Like I'm very much victory lapping because I never understood pretending like this team was not going to be at least a good regular season team.
Yeah.
But yeah, they legit go 14 deep. I mean, they can't necessarily right now because they're not fully healthy. But when they're healthy, there are a real 14 NBA rotation players on this team.
Right, and it's not like they're just giving minutes. Like, these are legit NBA players.
These are legit NBA players. I think they have 8 players currently that average more than 10 points a game. Marcus Smart, 10 points a game on the nose.
I didn't even mention Marcus Smart. Yeah. Wow.
Zach Edey, Scottie Pippen Jr., Jalen Wells, Santi Aldama, D-Bane, Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. And the other thing you have to give them a lot of credit for is their scouting department and how they've developed players over the past 4 years has been insane. The finds in Jay Huff, the finds in Scottie Pippen Jr., who I admittedly really, really was not a fan of when he was with the Lakers in particular. I thought he was kind of erratic, and his decision making was something he really needed to clean up. But he's a dog defensively. He's had incredible offensive games as well throughout the season, especially when Ja's been out. Jake LaRavia is one of the most solid players in the league in terms of
good at everything.
He's above average at pretty much everything. Plays this role. Luke Kennard, sharpshooter, and like you said, like Vince Williams, Gigi. It's almost to the point where you don't know how they're going to get those guys back into the rotation once they get back healthy. This team has a really, really high regular season floor, if we haven't already mentioned that. And they've kind of always been this team for me, and I think this season their offense has made a switch to where it's not as predictable, I think. One of the crazy things I did back during that 2023 playoff run, which I did have fun with, I scouted each team the Lakers played, and Memphis was clear-cut the easiest team to scout. From a Lakers perspective, it was like, they're going to do this with Jaren Jackson Jr., and that's it, right? Ja, okay, keep him away from this side of the floor. Or defensively, they're going to trap from the post this particular way. They're not the same kind of like plain Jane team anymore, I think schematically at least, which gives them a way higher offense, a way higher playoff ceiling come playoff time, where you don't want to see Memphis, like we already touched on, top 6 team in offensive and defensive rating. They have a really fun game tonight against Dallas. I'm definitely going to turn on once we're done with this. So yeah, I'm excited about this Memphis team, man. Josh is a top 20 player. Jaren's probably creeping in that range.
Okay, so that actually is a great segue to what I was going to ask you, because when I think about the Grizzlies right now, my head goes into like 70 different places. Like there's so many ways you can take this conversation, and it's just fascinating. I think they're probably the most interesting team to me right now. My first question would be for you, like in the hierarchy of the West, like I think we would both agree that the Grizzlies are clearly establishing themselves as like a top 3 or 4 regular season team in the West.
Yeah.
But in the playoffs, what does that look like? Like how many teams do you trust more than the Grizzlies in the playoffs? Like would you take Memphis over Dallas going forward in the playoffs yet?
Is this bail or like a cop out on my part? But like, can I say ask me in episode 13 after this game tonight? Is that a cop out?
Yeah. Well, it's tough because I think we both had them fifth. I think we both had them fifth heading into the season, and I
or maybe
definitely
LA
feel.
fifth. Where'd you have the Lakers at?
I had the Lakers sixth.
Okay. All right.
I think you had the Lakers seventh.
I had the Lakers
Phoenix.
seventh.
I had the Lakers ahead of Phoenix.
Yeah.
I had Memphis fifth, and now I feel better about the Grizzlies than I did when I had them fifth. I would definitely take Memphis over Minnesota as things currently stand.
Yes.
So that's one that they would leap. So that would automatically put Memphis in my top 4 with OKC, Denver, and
Dallas.
Dallas. Yeah, Dallas was my other one. Memphis and Dallas is tough for me. Memphis and Denver is tough for me. I'm still obviously OKC number 1. I feel good about that. And
where's Houston coming into play?
What were you saying?
Where's Houston coming to play?
That's what's weird, because I think Houston is probably the team that I think has the biggest disparity between their regular season and playoff ceiling right now.
Yeah.
And it's just because of their offensive limitations. I think Houston is an elite defense, like even on a historical scale. But I don't trust their offense when push comes to shove against a lot of these more established teams. And it's just because of the fact that, like, I was talking about this on Twitter yesterday. I think what the Rockets are missing is literally the idealized version of what Jalen Green was supposed to become.
Yeah.
Like if the Rockets had like Donovan Mitchell or Devin Booker in place of Jalen Green, I would probably view them as like a tier 1 team. Like they're that good and that deep. They just miss that true like half court perimeter scoring weapon that they can rely on consistently. In the way that like Memphis has Ja Morant, Desmond Bane to rely on.
Yeah.
And at this point, Jaren, that's the other thing. Jaren's offensive leap creates a whole different ceiling for this team in the playoffs, because that's just like a wrinkle that most teams do not have the physicality to plan for. And I'm monitoring this going forward. But my question for you, when you mentioned Ja being a top 20 player, I'm starting to wonder if by the end of the season, we're going to need to have a conversation on who even is the best player on the Grizzlies. And that sounds kind of absurd. But like when I'm really thinking about it and diving into the numbers, I'm like, Jaren was already established as like an all-star level player when he was basically a minus on offense a couple of years ago. Like he was an all-star and the defensive player of the year when he was probably still an offensive minus. Now that he's not just an offensive plus, but like a legitimate offensive player, like, do we need to revisit the discussion of who the best player on the Grizzlies is, and maybe they have 2 top 15 to 20 players? Like, is Jaren really like an all-NBA level player right now? I think so.
I think he's playing at that level for sure. I think that is a conversation you could definitely have at the end of the season.
And I think it comes down to what is sustainable for Jaren.
Right. And is Ja like kind of becoming victim of lack of production? And it's not even necessarily his fault, if we're being honest. Like, Ja, if I mean, okay, not to say, like, Ja's numbers are bad necessarily. You could even make the same argument for Jaren, too, because they're both playing less than 30 minutes. Ja's at 21 points, 9 assists. Josh true shooting, I just had it up. Josh true shooting this season is at 58.3, while Jaren Jackson is averaging 22.4 points, 6 boards, 3.2 stocks a game, and his true shooting is at 62.5.
62.6.
Or
62.6. I think the main thing working against Jaren, and I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast, I've definitely probably said it to you off camera, is that of any all-star level player,
he's the worst passer.
Jaren's clearly the worst passer. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just not, that's just not a part of his game at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the big thing, because like that shows that he needs a guy like Ja next to him to make the read for him on offense, and that's what's tough. But you could just as easily make the argument that this Grizzlies team is nowhere near competitive if they don't have a defensive anchor like Jared.
And they're not, like defensively, they're not the fifth or whatever sixth best defense in the league without Jaren Jackson.
And like you said, their playoff ceiling, their predictable offense, they couldn't run the stuff they do offensively if Jaren wasn't adding these layers to his game as a scorer. So yeah, I think it's tough. I think like right now I'm definitely still confidently taking Ja just because I know what we've seen from Ja in years past. Like going back to even 2022, Ja's just been an all-NBA level player.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make note of the type of leap that Jaren's taking right now and like the type of conversations he deserves to be in as a player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Jaren's hooping right now. Speaking of hooping, we've talked about this team a little bit throughout previous episodes. But, okay, do you want to go with them or do you want to go with Beard?
I was going to say, up to you. Like, you take this wherever you want to go. We got a few things to talk about, so.
All right, let's go. You know, we'll go that direction. We'll go to a team that we both kind of liked heading into the year. That we, I think I said this probably off camera. I think I might have put a tweet out about this too. I said the Hawks need to get serious, please. I'm so ready to believe in them, but I've seen them to get serious. They lost to the Hawks twice. I'm sorry, they lost to the Wizards twice, but then turn around beat the Cavs twice. They've won 4 straight games. They're now up to 500. They're now up to the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. Apparently saying Trey's one of the best pick and roll operators ever is a hot take. Didn't know that was the case. But Tyler, what's your take on this Hawks team and how everything's kind of coming together for them?
My take is that they are the weirdest team I've ever seen. They're the only team to beat the Cavs twice. The Cavs have lost 3 games, 2 to the Hawks and 1 to the Celtics. The Hawks are the only team to beat the Cavs twice. They're also the only team to lose to the Wizards. The Wizards have 2 wins. They're like 2-18. Both of them are against the Hawks. Yeah. Like, I don't know what to make of the Hawks. I think we've talked about some of their limitations in the past. I think they have arguably the worst center rotation in the league. Like, not that I hate either Capella or Okongwu. I think besides New Orleans is definitely the worst. Besides New Orleans, they have arguably the worst center rotation in the league, which I think is just, you already have such a limited floor and ceiling with that. But also, like, we talked about Trae Young's scoring, and now I'm starting to get to a point where I'm like, I don't know if Trae will ever get back to that from, like, 2022, like the 30 points per game on decent efficiency. I just don't know if that's in his game anymore. And I don't know if it's, like, anything specific with his play style. Maybe he's lost some agility, which he really relied on because of his other physical limitations. Or maybe it's just teams seeing it so much that they're just starting to figure it out. I really don't know what the case is there, but I don't know if Trae Young is going to be a 29, 30 point per game guy without just like chucking. And I don't know what to make of that for him as a player or for the team moving forward, because like, can you rely on like winning games with Trae scoring 19, 20 points when you're not a good defense? I don't know. I'm glad that Jalen Johnson has stepped into a big scoring role for them because he's been really important. I'm glad that Dyson hasn't been efficient offensively, but I'm glad that he's like confident enough to put 14, 15 points on the board. I don't really have any expectations for this team. I still view we were both pretty high on them moving into the season. I took their over on the win total because I thought they were above a 500 team. And they were getting projected as like 35, 36 wins. But I still do view them as like a first round exit. Lower. Frisky, dangerous first round exit. And I don't know where you go from here. That's the main thing. I really don't know what's next for them. They kind of feel a little stuck to me. I don't know if you feel that way.
You're stuck if this is the version of Trae, like permanently. Because I mean, unless Jalen kind of continues to blossom as it turns into a semi-consistent, like 23-plus point per game scorer on decent efficiency. Because for this whole thing to work, you kind of need Trae to be that 25-ish. I mean, what do you average? He averaged last year, I think, 26.
Something like that.
Yeah, Trae last season, 25.7 points. 43% from the field, and is what true shooting last season would have been. I think it's like 58, 57. Yeah, last season's Trae Young's true shooting percentage was 58.6. This season is 54.7.
Yeah.
I think One, this is the worst 3-point shooting season of his career, which I don't really know what to make of when players have career low shooting performances. Specifically from three, specifically if I know that Trey always kind of gets shots up and the percentage is going to be too high. But last season he shot 37% from three. 2021, 22, 38% from three. Even the years before that, 21, 34%, 2020, 36%. So getting back to that level even, I really don't know what to make of it. The volume isn't that much different either. So I don't know, it's kind of weird with Trey. If Trey gets back to that level of scoring to where he already really wasn't efficient anyway, but now he's just super inefficient, you get back to that level of scoring, then I think you can kind of – I'm not as worried about this team's ceiling or floor necessarily because then you have one of the best offensive engines in the league from a scoring perspective still that's the best playmaker in the league from a dominant on-ball standpoint. Because, obviously it's going to be Jokic, but, in terms of I'm bringing the ball down every single time, it's probably Trey right now.
I think you could sell me on that argument over an 82-game season. I don't think you can sell me on that argument heading into a 16-game playoff run.
Oh, that's the case. The answer's Luka.
Luka, yeah, exactly. That's where I was going to go. But, if we're just talking 82-game season, I think Trey's at worst third, right?
Yeah. Who would be the third one?
Well, I was going to say Jokic, Luka, and Trey.
Okay. Yeah.
And another guy we're going to talk about here in a sec, I'd also probably throw up there.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a big Trey guy. I've talked about getting his jersey in the past. I really hope from a scoring standpoint, he turns it around. Because if Trey turns it around, he gets somewhat back to what he's been. Literally says he stepped foot in the league from a scoring production standpoint. Then this Hawks team is, I think, clearly not a play-in team. Does that make them a team that wins a playoff series? No. Right now, if the playoffs start today, they face Orlando. Orlando probably wins at 5 or 6. They just have too many options to throw at Trey. Who wins a very hypothetical Knicks-Hawks series?
Knicks. Yeah, that's pretty easy to me.
Is it not close at all?
I don't think so. I don't think the Hawks are there. I think the Hawks, I think they would pose an interesting threat in terms of, they'd make games close. It would come down to the stretch in a lot of those games, but,
okay.
I don't think they would pose an actual elimination threat unless the Knicks were, battling injuries or something.
Okay, yeah. So I'm kind of thinking the same way in terms of every game would feel close, whereas Orlando, I view that as, this is a
I do think Trey would have a
blowout.
huge series against New York because of, cat drop and all that stuff. I think he'd have a big-time scoring series and playmaking series. But, how are you supposed to bring together... Dude, how are you going to stop that offense with Cat at the 5? What are you going to do? Cat stretching Capella for 7 games? Yeah, that's
it has to be
tough
Jalen
watch.
Johnson at the 5 the whole series. And just play small. That's kind of nasty, but that's kind of the...
Yeah, I don't know. Let's talk about James Harden, though, because that was the other guy I was talking about with, the best playmakers in the league. So, let me tell you an interesting story for viewers that aren't familiar with my game. I dropped a Clippers video the day that they lost to the Blazers. It was their 4th or 5th game, and I had made a Clippers video, and I had it locked and loaded in the chamber, and it was scheduled to release as soon as they finished the game that they played that night, which was against Portland. They lost in a late game thriller to Portland by 1 point. Yeah, we watched it. And my video, of course, flopped because who the heck's going to watch a video on the Clippers after they lose to the Portland Trailblazers? Fast forward, a few weeks, they go on a 3-game losing streak. So now my Clippers video is starting to gain some traction, but it's just comments that are saying, this video aged like milk. This video is terrible. It aged like milk. They're not actually a good team. James Harden choking again. After losing 3 straight, they've won 7 of their last 9. So they're 7-2 over their last 9 games. And I got a comment today that reminded me that I wanted to say in this episode that said, wow, this video aged really well. And it just goes to show why you shouldn't overreact to small samples on either side. Because now they could go ahead and lose 6 straight and it ages like milk again. But the Clippers are currently, what are they? The 6th seed? They're the 6th seed in the West, and I want to say they are like half a game behind 4th in the West at this point. I think they're half a game behind 4th in the West. So they're damn near a home court team. James Harden over that 9-game stretch is averaging 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 10 assists on 60% true shooting. That's like MVP type of production right there from James Harden. At what age, 35, 34 in his 16th season? Like, shout out to James Harden, man. The guy's playing out of his mind. And I think we talked about this like 2 episodes ago where I said the Clippers have probably the most simple offense in the league, where it's just dribble down, Harden and Zubac's pick and roll, Norman Powell curl from the wing. And like Harden's ability to utilize all of the options is just going to make defense impossible. Like if you do this, he does this. It's like a domino effect. It's like no matter what the defense does, James Harden's going to make the right decision. And that's what we mean when we say 82-game playmaker, because James Harden is just surgical as a playmaker. The scoring is very streaky at this point. Like if the three-point shot isn't falling, he's probably not scoring very efficiently. If the three-point shot is falling, well, okay, now you're going off for 40 points, and on top of like 16 assists. I know you wanted to talk specifically about the Nuggets game the other night. So what are some things you've noticed with James Harden in that game and just like the way he's been playing recently?
Yeah, with Harden, and maybe we've had this conversation already, but with Harden, because of the human freakazoid that is across town, LeBron's kind of ruined the way we talk about other older players in the league, like the way CP, the way KD, even the way Harden, Steph, even too, like. The ways the vets at this stage of their career are still dominating games pretty consistently is insane. But it's almost like it's the expectation now because of, like I said, Bron and how his career has panned out, where a 35-year-old that's in year 16 as a on-ball dominant guard that is bringing the ball up the floor every single time should not be this impactful. And the efficiency is not there, to Tyler's point, like, okay, if the three-point shot isn't falling, you're not scoring pretty efficiently. Like he's had some duds in terms of scoring performances so far this season. But for the system in James Harden, which, by the way, I hated when he said that at the time. I thought that was so corny when he said, I'm the system at the time or whatever. I forget if he said that in Philly or if it was L.A., but
I think it was when he was like in the midst of getting traded to the Clippers.
Yeah, like I hated that so much. But as the system, man, he is. I put a tweet out, and this I think is the best way. This is the best compliment I could give Harden, I think. I alluded to this a little bit earlier with Trey. I said, if you are a young guard that wants to like improve as a pick and roll operator, the 3 players you watch is Chris Paul. That's gotta be number 1 on every list almost. Number 2 is James Harden. Number 3 is Trey Young. The way that all 3 of those, that you described it from a process standpoint, it's a great way of putting it. The way that those 3 guys have the answer to every single coverage, it's insane. And somebody responded to that, like, okay, yeah, Harden is kind of an outlier, especially Pete Harden, because Pete Harden had the athleticism to just be a paint touch magnet when he wanted to. I'm like, okay, and that definitely complicates some things, especially if you want to switch, which now one of the takes we have had, or I've had specifically, has been if you switch some of the actions with Harden, that's probably your best bet. But even then, like, he's still a semi-reliable isolation scorer still in 2024, to where it's you're kind of just hoping he misses shots at this point. Because if you play those aggressive coverages, you play drop, he literally has the answer for everything. He can make every pass in the book. One of the most versatile passers of all time. And it is really, really fun to be able to watch Harden like still take control of games. He has that insane 43-point game against Washington, I think, where he couldn't miss. Yeah, the Nuggets game, he has the nasty snatch, vintage Harden, late in that game. The turnovers you live with, and I think you live with turnovers for any high-volume playmaker, and you just live with those. But yeah, Trey's awesome, and we've had this conversation before. I don't even want to bring it back up. But if Terminator comes back and he is any form of what he was last season, we're going to have a conversation about the Clippers and what their ceiling is, because Ty Lue gives them an insane floor. Harden gives them an insane floor. You add back who, before he got hurt, was a top 8 player last season.
Yep.
Now we have to have some conversations. Zubac is broken out. Norman Powell's maybe most improved player at 32 years old. There will be some conversation about the Clippers if Terminator comes back.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Kawhi just got upgraded to like practice activities like a couple days ago. I think Ty Lue said something like Kawhi is on the court active, so that could be sooner than we think. Whether or not he'll be himself, I'm not sure. I also need to point out the OCD in me that sermon you just went on was absolutely beautiful, except you called Harden Trey at the end, and it just ruined everything. you said Trey's amazing.
No.
so we might as well just cancel the episode. That's it right there. No, I'm 100% on board with everything you're saying. James Harden's a beast. The Clippers are really good, especially defensively. We've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
I love what they're doing over there on the good side of LA. That's moving
nice
on.
and comfy in Inglewood.
Yeah. Moving on. We'll keep it in California. The Sacramento Kings. I think we can all agree that Sacramento basketball right now is the bad side of California as a whole.
Yes. LA, you're safe for now.
They're really struggling, and this is. I'm going to give the floor back to you because this is one you've really been wanting to talk about. What? Temperature check on the Kings. Like, what are we doing? What's going on with them?
They're way worse defensively than I think we even thought they were going to be. They flat out can't guard. Like, that's the biggest issue. They can't guard a fly. And then their communication is also some of the worst in the league. And I'm a Lakers fan. Their communication is really, really bad defensively. Again, offensively, I'm not even worried about the Kings. I mean, they're 7th in offensive rating. If you look at net rating, though, they are.
I don't know. This is what's throwing me off so bad about the Kings, because they have the number 7 offense and the number 17 defense, which means they probably have a top 8 net rating, but they just lose all these games to teams that they should be beating.
Yeah, they have the 14th best net rating.
Okay,
they have a better net rating than the 11-9 Spurs, the 11-8 Suns. Take that with a grain of salt. The KD time off. The 11-11 Hawks, the 12-9 Lakers, they have a better net rating than. Their net rating isn't that far off of Milwaukee, or, I mean, not too far off of Denver's even. Mm-hmm. I just boil it down to, still at the end of the day, they can't guard anybody. And I don't know, man.
I have a hot take about the Kings, and it has to go with the net rating stuff. Really just the team in general.
Okay. They play tonight too. They have a big game tonight.
Okay. My take is that the biggest flaw with this Kings team right now is their late game offense. If you watch them in late games, it is a disaster. They do not know what to do. And I think there are so many go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say it's the complete opposite of what they've been the past 2 years or whatever.
I just pulled it up. So actually, they rank 17th in high leverage offensive rating. So it's not bad, but it's definitely a fall from like 7th. Like we were just talking about, they were 7th overall. 17th in those like late game situations. A worse late game offense than both Minnesota and Houston, who I would point to as two. That's a major flaw for both of those teams as well. That's why they're losing all these games. Like if you look at their game log, first game against the Timberwolves, they lost by 2. Second game against the Lakers, they lost by 4. Their next loss was to the Raptors by 3. Then to the Clippers by 9. Timberwolves again by 4. Hawks by 1. Nets by 5. Most recently, the Spurs by 2. They just threw that game away. I really don't know what to make of this team. There's so many different issues. Like I said, it starts with the late game offense. They just don't know what to do. It's like at a certain point, they just go, hey, De'Aaron or DeMar, we need you to really bail us out or else we're not going to score here. Yeah. And I think some of it comes down to like they don't know what to do with their lineups. Like Keegan's offense has fallen off a cliff since he's entered the league.
Yeah.
He's been a 27% three-point shooter this year, and you need him on the floor for defense. So it's like now you just have a complete offensive minus. He's so. My biggest problem with Keegan isn't even the shooting; it's the lack of confidence. Like it's like he never puts the ball down with a plan. He puts the ball down and kind of just like dribbles around, and then that mitigates the whole advantage of a versatile dribble handoff, delay action heavy offense because Sabonis handing it off to Murray, there's no advantage because Murray doesn't know what he's going to do with the ball yet.
Right.
That's a problem. And then it's like I said, you need him on the floor for defense because who else can defend? Like De'Aaron Fox is a good point of attack defender when he's locked in, but he's very inconsistent. DeMar, I would say, isn't a terrible defender, but his strength is probably like helping, like tagging, things like that. Sabonis, I think in a good team structure can be like an average defensive big, but they're relying on him to be their like second best defender for a lot of the time. So that's just not sustainable. And then it's like they run Trey Lyles as their backup five. The whole advantage of having Trey Lyles at the five is that you get 5 shooters on the court. Trey Lyles isn't making threes, so why is he playing over Alex Len, who's a legitimately good rotation big on both ends of the floor? Like, the only reason Lyles would play over Len is for shooting. If Lyles isn't shooting, play Len. Len's averaging like 7 minutes a game.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing. They picked up Jay Crowder. I don't know what that does. I don't think that fixes any of their issues. Keon Ellis still is like getting benched a lot, even though, like you said, they need him for defense and shooting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think there's one issue you can point to with the Kings, and I think the fact that they do still have like good team rating signals bodes pretty well. But if you can't close games down the stretch, they're like basically the anti KD Suns. We were talking about how like the Suns will get into these clutch games and they're just gonna win every time because they have Kevin Durant. That's what the Kings should be with DeRozan and Fox, but they're the exact opposite. They just collapse on the stretch of these close games, and they just keep blowing leads. And I don't know what to do because I was pretty high on the Kings moving into the season. I actually thought they were a 50-win threat. In order for them to win 50 games, they would have to finish the season 41-20 at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's in play. They're the 12th seed. They're 9-12. They've won 3 of their last 10. I'm not feeling too good about the Kings right now. And again, they're another team that I feel like is kind of stuck.
I wasn't all that high on the Kings coming into the year, but I didn't think it would look like this. To where, again, specifically like with the late game execution being this rough. Keegan was one of the guys that said, hey, look, if anything, like Keogh said, hey, look, this might be the year he breaks out even. The DeMar thing may be complicated, but kind of like you said, the lack of a plan and the lack of offensive confidence, like he still gets the opportunities. And the fact that the shot has just so far this season at least disappeared.
Even last season, though, like as a rookie, he was 41% from 3. I want to say last season he was like 35, and now he's
36, 35. Yeah.
Like, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's weird with Sacramento. Sacramento's schedule coming up. They play tonight against Houston, which will be kind of a fun test for both teams equally, I feel. I will say this. They've kind of had a rough schedule. They had the Clippers. They played the Clippers, OKC, San Antonio, which is now a big game for teams. Phoenix twice that they won both games, actually. I think this is probably when KD was out. But they did beat Phoenix twice. Not trying to take that away from them. They played LA. They played Minnesota again to start off the season. Oh my bad. They played the Clippers twice, lost to them both times. Like their schedule has been rough, but that's the landscape of the Western Conference. It's not going to get much easier. They have Houston tonight. They have Memphis Thursday, and then second half the back-to-back. You have to go to San Antonio. San Antonio has to be one of the worst teams to play on the second half of back-to-back right now.
Yeah. Dude, I'm looking at the Kings' schedule, and they don't look out. Like we were talking about earlier, the Magic have had a really easy schedule these last few weeks. The Kings don't have a stretch like that. It's like every time they start to face some easier teams, they have like a Thunder game every third game, or like a Warriors or a Nuggets game. And it's like, I just don't know when you're going to see them flip the switch and string together a bunch of wins.
Yeah.
Maybe like I could see them being the type of team that has a really good late season push, like late March, April, to just like sneak into the playoffs. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't think they're
their schedule kind of eases up around that time. Ironically,
it does get easier, but it's still not like you don't look at it and go, "Oh, this is food." But maybe then again, that's just us being lower on the Kings at this point. Like maybe there is no team that's food for them because they're losing to teams that they should be beating.
Yeah, there's a stretch early February, or really February in general. The February schedule isn't that bad. You play the Pelicans 3 times in February, and you play, hopefully by then, a very much tanking Utah Jazz team.
Okay.
So there's some room for hope there. I mean, Brooklyn, this is very much off topic. Brooklyn's been so fun. I do want to ask, is there any point this season where Brooklyn kind of pulls the 2022 Jazz and says, yeah, enough of that. We had our fun, and let's just buy in? You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think they're gonna ride unless they make trades. I could see them making a bunch of trades.
Yeah.
Like getting off of Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Thomas, like getting off these guys, and then I could see it. But if they keep their roster intact, I just think they're gonna keep riding the high. Because like, why not?
So Cam Johnson's hooping. I love Cam Johnson.
I love Cam Johnson. Yeah. Nets have some dudes. But Hooper. Actually, funny enough, that's a perfect segue because I think a lot of those Nets guys would fill the holes on like teams that are just lacking certain edge. Like I think this takes me to the Bucks because we're going to talk about the Bucks. Like they're a team that lacks perimeter defense, lacks athleticism, still needs shooting around Giannis.
Yeah.
And like a lot of those guys would be just perfect fits in Milwaukee. Bucks have won 6 straight. They're the 5th seed in the East right now. I think the last time we talked about the Bucks was like, is it time to panic? And I think both of us were kind of like, we're a little bit lower on them than we were going into the season. Like I had them second in the East coming in. I think we both were like coming away thinking like, yeah, maybe our expectations are a little lower, but I'm not completely out, especially because Middleton hasn't played a game. Now they're kind of turning it around with this easier part of the schedule. They've made a few changes, like AJ Green and Andre Jackson are getting more minutes, which I think is awesome because you need young blood on the court when your stars are all aged. Giannis is playing like a superhuman on both ends of the floor. Like the guy just looks like he straight up looks like the best player in the world over these last 2 weeks. We talked about that in our MVP episode. And Brook Lopez has remained like a really reliable big. I'm still not like sold on Brook's impact in the playoffs, but over the course of 82 games, just as like a drop big spacer who can occasionally get some post buckets. Like Brook Lopez is just really reliable as a starting 5 next to Giannis. I still feel kind of the same way about the Bucks that I did last time. Like I don't have super high expectations for them. I still view them as like a pretty big playoff threat, but I don't think they can like do anything with this current roster construction, like in terms of competing for a championship. But I definitely am not out on them to the point where I'm like, yeah, this is a middle of the pack type of team. Like I definitely still think they can unravel like a 50-win season. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I think being out on this team completely after seeing what Giannis and Dame have done this season would just be disingenuous.
Yeah.
Now, do they need to like add pieces to this roster? Yeah. Just to their defense, I can somewhat understand the idea of what do we look like with Middleton back in the frame. I can kind of support that idea a little bit. But man, Giannis is playing like Milwaukee somehow scratches and claws to 50 wins. Then we'll have to have the conversation about MVP again if this run is sustainable. Coming back from such a poor start, what was it? 2-9 start, 2-8 start.
I know they were 1-6. I know they were 1-6. Yeah,
1-6 start. Okay, so what? The schedule's kind of been mediocre, and that's being pretty polite if we're being completely honest about Milwaukee's schedule recently. But I mean, they play Boston on Friday. That'll be a big game to see how serious they are. You have Giannis and Dame. Hopefully, they're both ready to go. Last time they did play back in November 10th. Giannis had the typical Giannis, 43 and 13. Dame was available as well for that game. I am Milwaukee 4th coming into the year. I had them below Philly, New York, and Boston, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, Philly, obviously, that take went to shit. But, I mean, Orlando's kind of been a little bit better than we've expected. Their schedule's also been pretty polite to them.
Yeah.
But, they're still right about where. I mean, maybe it's like my confidence in them being a true title contender currently constructed has fallen. But in terms of their spot in the East, yeah, it's probably still no much different than what it was preseason. They've regained some of my faith in them. But it's because, like you said, Brooke is still really reliable, and that's awesome for them. And then Giannis and Dame are still very much elite basketball players, and that goes a long way for a team like Milwaukee. At some point, you really want to see them rattle off big win after big win. That's why Friday night against Friday night against Boston, they have a big Cavs game in 2 weeks. The rest of this December schedule is pretty much a cakewalk, but they're a serious team. But, yeah, eyes will be on Milwaukee. If they just rattle off some wins and are like a couple games back I keep wanting to say Milwaukee, a couple games back of Cleveland and Boston, we look up at it's middle of January, February, it wouldn't really surprise me, especially depending on when to get Chris back. But, I'm kind of about the same as you right now.
Yeah, I don't know what a move looks like for them, like what, because they don't really have the assets. But I do wonder. One thing I was thinking about earlier this morning was like why Ryan Rollins was given such a short leash, because I think he barely played this season, but every time he was on the floor, I thought good things were happening. Like he had one game with 5 steals in like 20 minutes. He had another with, I think, 3 blocks in 12 minutes. And just his energy as a defender and then, like, a guy who can also set the table on offense, I felt like that was exactly what they were lacking. And then he just, like, didn't play again. I don't know. Like, when he was on the floor, good things were happening. They were winning his minutes comfortably. He played a big role in multiple wins, and then I think he got sent down to G League or something. I haven't seen him in a few games, so I don't know what's going on with that. Like, I wish Ryan Rollins would get some more minutes, but like I said, getting that young blood on the court. Andre Jackson, I think, is a very flawed player, but for all of his flaws, he's a freak athlete. And there's just good things that are going to happen when you have a freak athlete on the court. AJ Green is an absolute sniper, which has been huge for them. Like, he stepped into the role of Pat Connaughton and just exceeded Pat Connaughton. So I think the Bucks are figuring some things out. I think one thing we have to mention is with Doc Rivers, what does that ceiling really look like? Because I would say both of us are kind of like, Doc Rivers. Like, I think the problem with Doc Rivers, like, I think he's such a good regular season floor raising coach. Like, he's going to figure things out in the regular season. He's going to get your team to 50 wins. The thing that bothers me is how stubborn he is. Like, when one thing isn't working, he's not going to, like, try it. It's like if you have a flood coming from one hole, he's going to, like, instead of trying to plug that one hole, he's going to, like, be like, well, there's no holes anywhere else, so let's just, like, hope this hole doesn't actually drown the entire boat. Like, like that's the best way I could think about it. It's like, instead of plugging that hole...
That's such a good analogy.
And, like, another hole pops up, it's like, well, no, that one hole isn't enough to flood us, so let's just ignore it. And like, yeah, I don't know what I expect from them in the playoffs. I do think they'd be, like... Because in any series in the East, they have the best player on the floor, and that automatically gives you a chance. Like, if they went into a series against Orlando... Like, does Orlando have the firepower to match the production of Giannis and Dame? I don't know. But then again, Orlando's rotation might be able to, like, nullify Dame in a lot of ways with, like, Suggs, Black, and all those guys at the point of attack. So,
Jonathan Isaac, you're ready to play 45 minutes a night.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I don't know.
That'd be interesting. That'd be fun.
But, final takeaway. I like that they're playing young guys. Bucks are looking pretty good, and Giannis is, at worst, a top 2 player on the planet. It's my final.
Yeah. Dame has been a top 15 player, and that's probably a little too conservative with Dame. We'll keep our eyes on Milwaukee, but there's not too much you can say about this Milwaukee team.
Yeah, and that's pretty much going to wrap up all of my thoughts, and I think you've got your final piece out as well. Appreciate everybody who listened to this episode and has been listening to all of our episodes. Make sure you follow us on social media. For my stuff, you can probably just look up Hoop Venue on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Find all of that good stuff. Join our playback.tv/Hoop Venue. We're going to be watching one game every 7 months, so make sure to tune into that. Follow us on our personal social medias. Mine is at Tyler Britton _ on all platforms. If you want to follow him on Twitter, his is Sean _DAVI. And yeah, that's pretty much going to do it. Like I said, appreciate everyone listening, and we will catch you guys next time in episode 13.